Well, at long last, Mississippi State has its pitching coach. It looks like the search is coming to an end for Chris Lemonis and the Bulldogs, and it looks like they're going to hire South Carolina pitching coach Justin Parker. It ends basically a 7 to 8 week stretch here for Chris Lemonis searching for a pitching coach. A lot of people getting restless during this search, but Chris Lemonis gets his guy, and I think the best possible hire that Chris Lemonis could make here. This is a coach that's still relatively young, but he's also experienced. He's been a pitching coach now for, I believe, a decade at this point. He was at UCF. He was at Indiana. He did a great job at those schools. Then he came to South Carolina the last couple of years and has been outstanding for the Gamecocks and worked through some tough situations with injuries and things like that. And it really is probably, like I said, the best hire that Chris Lemonis could make. We were critical of the possibilities of this hire, and I'm not going to say critical. I'm more so than kind of realistic. We thought that this was going to be a tough sell for Chris Lemonis, and I think that's been backed up by national writers, people that cover the sport that are objective to this program, and a lot of people believe that this was going to be a really tough sell. Chris Lemonis is coming off back-to-back losing conference seasons, back-to-back years without making the NCAA tournament, and you're on the hot seat going into 2023. It's 2 years removed from the national championship. There's no doubt about it that Chris Lemonis' job is on the line this next season. Selling that to a really, really good pitching coach that's in a great situation was going to be tough. And I think that's why Chris Lemonis deserves a lot of credit on this hire. To go out there, you're in the game with Rob Walton at Oklahoma State. I certainly believe Mississippi State was in it with him to potentially get his services. Mike Silva over at Nichols, who has been putting together some good things at Nichols as the head coach. Mississippi State was in the game with him. Looked like they were very close to a hire with Mike Silva last week. That kind of fell through. And Justin Parker pops up for Mississippi State within the last week. To me, that is the best hire of all three. And I think that's the best hire that you could make in this situation, to get a guy in your conference that had one of the best pitching staffs in the conference this past season, to pluck him from a university that has been really successful in the past in baseball, I think speaks volumes to what Chris Lemonis was able to sell to him. I know that he had a really good visit, Parker did, when he came to campus this past weekend on Saturday, stayed for a few hours, got the chance to see the facilities. We've heard that he was at Chris Lemonis' house. They had a nice dinner, and it was really just a great visit. And a couple of days later, he's hired. And really, I think the deal was basically getting done on Sunday night. So this news, by the way, first reported on our site. Steve Robertson reported it this morning, on Monday morning. So we had that news first. Really good scoop by our guys there. But it's just a really good step forward for Mississippi State. We've talked about this many times, and how the pitching has just been disastrous for the Bulldogs. And really, if you look at some of the other areas, this past year, defense was not good, but it was really good in 2021. Hitting has been up and down, but it has shown glimpses of being really good. The one constant for Mississippi State the last 2 years has been its pitching staff. They have not been great at evaluations. They've not been great at development. They've not been great with the overall philosophy, execution. Everything's just been bad for Mississippi State when it comes to its pitching staff, outside of a couple of guys. So getting a guy in there that you feel like can stabilize the situation, and that's what Justin Parker has done at the places that he has been, that's a huge step forward for Mississippi State. There's no doubt about it. Mississippi State got better on Monday with the addition of Justin Parker. Can he turn this around right away? I don't know the answer to that. I think that he's a good enough pitching coach that he can do that. I think that Mississippi State has some pieces on campus right now that he can work with. I also believe that Mississippi State has got to go to the transfer portal and get some difference makers. That's the most important thing over the next couple of weeks for Mississippi State. They've got to hit that portal hard. They've got to go out there and get guys not only that can just eat up some innings or be a matchup guy here or there. You got to get some guys that are bona fide starters that can play in this league. Because right now, they don't have a rotation that you feel good about, much less, the rest of the staff. So I like the pieces that they have coming back. I like Nate Dome a lot. I like the freshmen a lot with Drangelo Sanja and Bradley Lofton and Brock Tapper and Evan Sierre, Will Gibbs. Those freshmen are really good, and I feel like they have a different kind of makeup that could really be special. But it takes a coach to kind of put those guys in the right direction, develop them. Mississippi State has a lot of analytics behind them. They have that pitching lab. So there's a lot of the science side of things that can work for Mississippi State. A lot of times I feel like coaches rely a little too heavily on that. But to me, there's a lot of potential there with this pitching lab and the analytics that they use. And I feel like there's probably going to be some hires made in the coming days and weeks that allows Mississippi State to maximize that pitching lab that they have and the analytics that they have to make this pitching staff overall better. But the biggest takeaway to me, I talked about this on Twitter earlier, Justin Parker's staff walked over 100 less batters than Mississippi State in 2023. And when you look at the innings pitched, and they've pitched significantly more innings than Mississippi State, that's a staggering number. Mississippi State, 321 walks. I think South Carolina had 205. And they threw over 500 innings. Mississippi State threw, I think, 463 or something like that. So they were second in the league at South Carolina in walks allowed per 9 innings, and or the least amount of walks allowed, I guess. On top of that, they go up the least amount of home runs in the SEC, and they were second in earned run average. And their earned run average was nearly 3 runs less than Mississippi State. That's a pretty big number. If State had the earned run average that South Carolina did this past year, they would be in Omaha right now. I don't think I'm exaggerating about that. I think if you take 3 runs almost off that earned run average, it's hard to imagine Mississippi State not being in those games this week. So that's kind of where Mississippi State is. They're far away in a sense, but they're not far away. Like, there's a lot of work to be done with that pitching staff, but it's like if you can just fix that, this is a program that is a national title contender. I think that everything else is in place. The numbers from the offensive side of the ball were up and down. If you look at it, the conference numbers weren't great, but they showed plenty of promise, and they did enough on the offensive side of the ball that they should have been a regional host and potentially a national seed. But the pitching was so bad, they couldn't even make the SEC tournament. So it is a very big mess to fix. There's no doubt about it. But it's really the one piece of the puzzle for Mississippi State that's separating it from last or second to last in the SEC as a team to competing in the SEC. And that's a big step forward for Chris Lemonis to make. And if we're going to criticize Chris Lemonis, and I'm putting myself in that same category, because I've done plenty of that to this staff. If we're going to criticize him, I'm talking to myself, I'm talking to everybody. You've got to give him a ton of credit on this. He's working his butt off to make sure that this gets fixed. And, I mean, you can definitely say that this is his problem. He's the head coach. He answers for all of this. So it's not like he inherited a mess. It's not like somebody else screwed it all up. He's ultimately responsible for all this. It is his problem to clean up. But you do have to give him a tremendous amount of credit for getting this kind of hire made. And I think, not a hire that really broke the bank for Mississippi State. From what we understand, it was a significant raise from what he was getting at South Carolina, but not one that was just a over-exaggerated number for Mississippi State to make a pitching coach hire. So I think it was a reasonably priced hire. We don't have the specifics on that. I've heard some numbers, but I don't want to speculate on that until we get that contract in. But I don't believe Mississippi State broke the bank here, and that's really important because, a lot of us believed they were going to have to overpay for some guys. I don't believe they overpaid for Justin Parker. I think he's worth the price. I think that Mississippi State had to have a really good pitching coach to try to turn this thing around, and I think they got it. This is a guy that I believe is going to help Mississippi State get back to where they need to be. And now you just got to get the job done. They got to go to the transfer portal. They've got to go get some difference makers out there, and they got to turn this thing around, or Chris Lemonis is going to be looking for another job. I mean, that's the bottom line. This is it for Chris Lemonis, and he knows that. He understands that. He understands how important this season is for him, and that's why he went out there and got this coach. So major kudos to Chris Lemonis for this hire. I think it's an excellent pickup for Mississippi State. I'm not going to guarantee that Mississippi State is back. I'm not going to tell you that everything's okay now for Mississippi State, but it is definitely a great start for the Bulldogs in what is the most important offseason that I can remember for Mississippi State baseball. This is a very, very big offseason, and the work has already begun for the staff to try to get things back under control. There's a head start for all these schools in the SEC. Ole Miss has gotten some good players of the portal. Arkansas, LSU's in Omaha, and they've already gotten a couple of good guys. Mississippi State is behind in the transfer portal, and let's just say what it is. They're behind right now. They've got some catching up to do, but it's not too late. There's still some quality arms out there. Justin Parker has been on some arms for South Carolina. We'll see if he goes after those guys for Mississippi State and see where it goes from there. But the Bulldogs over the next couple of weeks, I think, have got to start making some traction there. You got to get some pitchers. You got to get a corner infielder, maybe a middle infielder, potentially an outfielder. I think State's in pretty good shape in outfield, especially what we're seeing from Connor Hijack in the summer leagues right now. So there's some pieces that Mississippi State's got to get, and they only got one guy in the portal right now. So it's really important that Mississippi State starts to make some moves in this transfer portal, and I fully expect that to happen. I expect you to see multiple guys committed to Mississippi State over the next couple of weeks, I imagine. But they got to be the right guys. That they can't just be bodies, can't be warm bodies. Mississippi State has got to get difference makers. They got to get a legit third baseman. They got to probably get a guy in the middle infield. We're not 100% certain on freshman Dylan Cupp, and I feel pretty good about Mississippi State getting him to campus, but he's also still going to be a true freshman if he does get to campus. You can't rely on a true freshman to play shortstop. That's going to be a work in progress there. I think he has the ability to do it, but that's not something that you need to stamp in ink. So they probably need to try to find maybe a veteran middle infielder that's looking to move up, a guy that can provide some depth there. That would be great. Maybe another corner outfielder that you could bring in for competition or potentially come in and take a spot there. You're losing Kellum Clark and you're losing Colton Ledbetter in the outfield, and you have some good pieces back. Bryce Chance, Dakota Jordan, Connor Hijack, Aaron Downs, those guys are back, but you might need another one. So those are some pieces that Mississippi State has got to land over the next few weeks. But the pitching is the most important thing. And I think that's going to be where they spend their most time on that. So we'll see what happens. But for the time being, for Monday, State fans should be excited about this. State fans should be optimistic about what they're getting in Justin Parker. I think Chris Lemonis nailed this hire. It is a much better hire than I could have imagined Mississippi State making, and he deserves his kudos for this. So great job by Chris Lemonis. Now it's time for more work to be done for Mississippi State, and we'll see if they can't get it back on track. But nice step forward. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. This has been Robbie Falk from 247, the Starkville Daily News. Continue to stay tuned on our board, by the way. We had a great turnout for our 60% off deal that we had for this past month. I think that deal has expired at this point, but we'd still love to have you. We've had the only place where you could find information on this coaching search was on our message board. And I know it was crazy. I know it was up and down, but I feel like there was some really good content at the end of the day. You guys knew that Justin Parker was there, and kudos to Steve Robertson. He handled most of this search and pretty much all of it, to be exact. So kudos to him for keeping you guys up to date. We got guys on every sport, and we're usually the ones that you're hearing about these guys first. The names that pop up, there's very few times where we don't already have those names out there. So make sure you're over there with us and kind of tuned in. Of course, recruiting, we've got that covered as well, and there's plenty of stuff going on right now. Recruiting is red hot right now, so come check us out if you haven't already. If you aren't subscribed to this channel, please do so. I'd really appreciate that. Of course, it's free. You'll get updated every single time I post a video, and I'll make sure to keep you guys up to date whenever I'm going to go live when we do our Talking Dogs live session. We'll probably try to do one of those this week, so make sure you're looking out for that. All right, guys, we appreciate you guys. I'll talk to you probably later this week.